And it's my pleasure to announce our next guest, who is the Chief Expert AI and Program Manager House of AI at Deutsche Bahn, Dr. Thomas Thiele. Thomas will give us an insight into the roadmap of Deutsche Bahn as an asset-heavy company and the reinterpretation of corporate governance in order to foster the enterprise-wide integration of AI. Thank you for being here today, and we are looking forward to your presentation.
Yes, so thank you very much for the kind introduction. I hope you're able to see my screen right now.
Yes, we can see it.
Yes, perfect. So a short introduction into my topic. The idea was to give you a glimpse at how our current AI topics are developing from strategy towards the company-wide integration, and especially within a very short time frame. So we started with this topic in 2019, and this was the first time I gave a presentation here also at the Big-Data.AI Summit in 2019. So a time for an update right now. And let's start with a chart that I already brought with me in 2019. So the idea why AI at Deutsche Bahn. So what's the idea behind the integration of this technology into a mobility and logistics service provider? And you already mentioned in the introduction the asset-heavy company. Yes, the Deutsche Bahn relies on their assets. And if there's an increasing demand on mobility and logistics, which we emphasized in the pre-COVID-19 area, and we also hope that this will move on further after the vaccinations have been done. So we thought of more capacity on the infrastructure, more people that are traveling, so that an asset-heavy company reacts on that with the extension of their assets, right? So Deutsche Bahn started with their infrastructure extension, and we build up new capacities, which means buying new trains and, of course, optimize their processes. And the first argument for AI comes in here. So what if we can make better use of our existing assets if we are able to leverage more capacity out of our trains, be better in maintenance part and so on. And with this, we started in 2019. And what I would like to show you is our current status, because we thought of, well, if we integrate such a technology like artificial intelligence into our company, we have to make it tangible for some sort of asset-heavy company like Deutsche Bahn is. And we started to develop different use cases and projects for that. And what you can see here is a current overview on our current topics, which are mainly centralized on what we call train production. So every process that makes our train running, especially focusing on train operations. So what if a train leaves our depot and comes into maintenance afterwards? So the time when passengers and goods are traveling, and the next step, maintenance, when trains are being prepared for their next rides. So we developed a program out of 13 projects that are in different stages, maturity grades of realization. You see that on that target chart on the left side of this slide here, which means the closer the dots gets to the center of the target, the more are in the usable productive state. So we started with the optimization of train dispatching and developed that further to some sort of digital twin for train operations. But we also, let's give an example, in digital train maintenance, we are also focusing on flexible camera diagnosis, implementing, for example, different AI techniques to give us a glimpse on what is currently damaged on our trains. And so the red dots I mentioned before are the ones that I would like to highlight in the upcoming minutes. And this will be also part of what I call AI governance, because we have very large topics which we are developing over all the company, over all different business units. And the idea is how to steer that project, how to come in with some sort of management system. And this leads to some sort of reinterpretation of AI governance at that point. And that leads me to the next aspect here. So the AI governance as a management system in order to foster integration by a combined governance and project approach. So on the one hand, we are a corporate-wide governance center. On the other hand, we are doing different projects and realizing them from first feasibility studies to products in an iterative manner. And this is where AI governance and the reinterpretation comes in handy in order to serve as a management system and give us some sort of availability, usability, integrity, and functional safety of AI projects. This is not only a technical issue from my point of view. So we are currently focusing not only on the technological basis, which of course have to serve certain functionalities, but also in order to integrate people and the organization into that change processes AI projects currently leading on. So for example, the different user acceptance, the different parts of the organization processes have to be changed that are parts of our projects too. It's a combined triangle of people, organization, and technology. And on the other hand, sustainability of the projects is a very strong point here, especially in those times we are currently facing, because all the efforts we spent so far need to be some sort of sustainable integration into the different business areas and not in a proof of concept or feasibility state. And at the first four words I mentioned on that slide, availability, usability, integrity, and functional safety, are topics that I would like to highlight in the upcoming minutes. So functionality, what does that mean for us in an interpretation of AI governance? We have to evaluate and we have to ensure the evaluation and standardized evaluation and robustness of AI models and of course AI services in heavy metal processes. That especially leads to proofs and for example, on functional reliability and fail safety, especially if we are implementing AI procedures in safety critical environments, for example, in maintenance processes, especially when we move on from classical maintenance towards to predictive maintenance, as an example. The integrity is a very strong point here. The handling of training data in heavy metal processes, for example, what does it mean how to design a training data set for an algorithm and also a testing data set in order to avoid biases in that area, to provide proof of functional safety, to assure the explainability, and also to get the users, the different people, the different stakeholders on board for those topics. And this serves to some vertical scaling in the different business areas. So for example, we start a project with some sort of feasibility study, move on to a prototype, move on to a minimum viable product. And with this elemental basis, we come to some sort of vertical scaling in that project. So basically, the idea of bringing a project from the feasibility to a product. But what if, and especially in such a large company at Deutsche Bahn, we also talk about horizontal scaling. I think usability is a very strong point here, and we tackle that point with cross-staffing of projects. So every time we work on the project, we work differently. We work across different business units. On the one hand, we also do some sort of resource split in the different projects. So for example, we incorporate stakeholders from train operations, from maintenance, together with different AI specialists and data specialists in certain projects, and also across different business units, because we tackle projects that are relevant for overarching areas. And this is especially for the usability part in the domain. And on the other hand, we have a strong focus on the people that are developing the different AI procedures. And this is also some sort of career development here. So we connect the different AI experts in some sort of networks, foster the exchange here. Perhaps some people already have developed certain AI components, or also have the idea on how to solve certain problems, and build up those tech communities in order to interconnect the very few people we have that are have a strong competence, especially in that area. And the last point here, availability. The most striking point for me here is our inner source principle, which means that we foster the share of components that have already developed as an internal open source approach, tools, processes, and so on, that are developed in the one area could also be shared with another, and also be integrated in what we call our company-wide AI platform. And this sort of horizontal scaling, I would like to emphasize in the upcoming slides, and especially give a connection to the different projects I mentioned on the last chart. So let's start with our core projects. Perhaps some people that are currently listening have also seen my presentation in 2019, where I presented you a first glimpse on this project here, reinforcement learning in the area of train dispatching. You see here on the left slide what we are currently developed for the commuter trains at the S-Bahn Stuttgart, so the commuter trains in Stuttgart. You see here some sort of tool that the dispatching agents are currently able to use, where you can forward and rewind the different traffic. Also, based on a simulation, we connect with our different traffic data, and also there's the reinforcement learning AI based on top that evaluates different anomalies, different situations in the network. For example, you see here a train that has a 14 minutes delay in that movie, and the AI gives the people a sort of recommendation on how to change how to efficiently change the row of trains in order to reduce, for example, delay of trains and ensure better train operations. And what we have developed is this thing from scratch, in meaning get the data together, build up the features, develop the reinforcement learning models, and develop that sort of front end. And the idea was, well, okay, we developed that for the metropolitan areas or metropole areas, and this is currently in production at the Stuttgart region. But what if we could also transfer that horizontally towards other areas? And this is some idea we are currently focusing. Basically, we took the components here, implemented some sort of inner source principle, brought the people together that work on the domain of dispatching, and thought of, okay, let's scale that around different areas in Germany, for example, different commuter trains, or for example, different regional areas. So the extension on the one hand to different locations, and the extension on the one hand to more large geographical areas in order to leverage a more efficient train dispatching and train operations. One example on the area of train operations that we are currently focusing and currently rolling out. So this is an example, especially for the inner source principle. Let's give you a second example here based on train maintenance. So we are currently focusing here especially on visual inspection of trains. So for example, a train goes under a certain camera bridge. A camera bridge takes on different images of that train, and these images are evaluated by some sort of AI. And what we are currently developing based on 4 different projects we are focusing here is the development of some sort of AI platform. We call it as an analytical toolbox here for visual inspection. And I would like to give you a short introduction to that too. For example, you see here a movie that is recorded under a camera bridge at in Munich, for example, at the depot in Munich. A train comes in, you see here this imagery, and you see afterwards how the detection of on the visual inspection based on AI takes place. You see that here, for example, different components are tracked based on their location and are evaluated if there's an anomaly or not. And the idea is, if we look on horizontal scaling here, we have 4 different projects in different business areas of DB. You see here an example of the ICE fleet, which means long distance trains, but also our colleagues that are operating the regional trains, the colleagues from DB Cargo are working on different areas of that. The idea was, okay, this lays the foundation out for some sort of analytics toolbox. And we made up this analytics toolbox, or I give you some sort of idea for this analytics analytics toolbox here, because it mainly tackles the cameras and the data, so standardize the way on the data flows from the shop floor to the evaluation systems. And of course, the integration of into the different maintenance processes. This includes, on the one hand, the integration in standardized large IT systems for that, and of course, the user front end and UI UX. But the core of that is especially the analytics on AI part. So we saw that different areas of trains, the visual inspection, and for example, the visual inspection of regional trains are coming together in sort of, they have components in common that have to be detected. So the idea was set up a standardized analytic pipelines, especially for the training of AI models, and doing some sort also of transfer learning in that area. We are currently working on that and have very fruitful results so far, but also evaluate some sort of standardized evaluation for that, because we are in a safety critical area here, especially if a train comes in and this is some sort of automation. You also have to be sure that this is also some sort of explainable, so this comes in handy too. And we build up a technical infrastructure for that because it combines at this point edge and different cloud infrastructure. So to bring this presentation to some sort of conclusion, I brought to you some examples for horizontal scaling, and I would like to end up with some sort of vision here, where the idea is that on the one hand, we have AI governance, the usability or the making data usable as the front line, that also builds up on different data governance activities here, data governance activities that have a strong point at DB, especially that because of our board has decided that our data now is freely available within our company. We have some sort of a board decision for that. And this leads to the idea that, okay, we have some sort of reversal of evidence, right? So if you want to keep your data, you have to give proof that you are not able to share that data. And this lies an excellent foundation for the usage of data governed by the processes that I mentioned before. And from a use case perspective, you see here some sort of imagery we depicted on for the connection of different projects. For example, if I bring the two examples I mentioned together, the prediction of different damages at train in order with dispatching of trains in order to derive a better customer experience during the journey and to bring a more reliable, resilient train system. So thank you so much for your attention so far, and now I'm happy to hear your questions.
Thank you very much, Thomas. I think we have time for one last question. And what do you think are the main obstacles that companies face when they introduce a smart data strategy?
Well, from my opinion, you have to focus on that data strategy in the core processes of your company. So I think we followed the idea that if we want to succeed with that idea, you have to integrate the data strategy within the heart of the company. And this is, I think, a strong reason where some data strategies fail, because they're coming from the outside, tackle different processes that are not so relevant for a company. So my idea would be start in the heart of a company, and this was also the idea here at Deutsche Bahn.
Perfect. Thank you very much. For all other questions, the attendees, of course, can connect with you on Swapcard. Thank you very much for being here today.
Thank you too. Bye-bye.